Well,
The task at
honestly,
hand.
Thank you. It is just us so far. So welcome to the Camden Charter Commission meeting of September 30th, 2020. I hope Nancy is coming. We know Mark is out of town. And Jean White is going to be watching us via YouTube to take our minutes. So first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from September the 16th. And are there any changes or corrections for us to pass on to Jean?
I didn't see any, but I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from the 16th.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? And thank you so much, Jean, for doing this via YouTube. We really appreciated it. Okey doke. The next thing we have is a review of the revised language on growth management. We talked about making these changes at our last meeting, and I included the ones that we agreed upon, and we have a draft of some additional language. I hope you all have had a chance to review it, and I hope that that reflects the conversations that we had at our last meeting. Tried to clarify the language, particularly under the comprehensive plan. Do you want me to read any of this?
I think if you could read publicly the language we were stumbling over last time, remember?
Okey doke. We did pass the language in the first paragraph, but I'll go ahead and read those where it's changed. Camden recognizes that in order to survive and prosper in a quickly changing world, it needs to be diligent about providing for and implementing growth management and long-range planning, and shall have a municipal growth management program that includes a comprehensive plan. The town's existing comprehensive plan and existing land use ordinance and their amendments and successors shall comply with the procedures, goals, and guidelines established by law. So what we had voted on at the last meeting was to delete "and an implementation program." So the other change to the language is down in C, comprehensive plan, and I'll read it as it's changed. The town shall develop and maintain a comprehensive plan every 10 years or as often as called for in state law. The select board shall appoint a comprehensive plan committee of up to 11 voting members to include all members of the planning board and additional citizens of the town of Camden. Consistent with 30A MRS 4324, as may be amended from time to time, the committee shall provide for a broad range of opportunity for comment, review, and participation from town staff, town committees, and the public in revising and updating the comprehensive plan. So I'll stop at that paragraph.
Did I miss something? Did we actually talk about the number of people on the comprehensive plan committee? Was that
Yes.
11?
We did.
Was that what
Yes, we
decided?
did.
Okay.
We did.
That's a lot of people.
Well, I think
Five
It
on the
is,
planning board,
it
didn't
is,
we?
it is
Huh?
up to.
5 on the planning
Up to,
board, and
right.
6 regular
Plus
citizens.
2 alternates, so you got 7.
7, so that's, yeah.
So, but it says up to,
Yeah.
so there could be some planning board members that may not participate, but it would be 4 additional citizens.
It's kind of interesting in that we're proposing that the budget committee be 9 members, down from 20, whenever it is now, and then this has 11 members. It seems kind of counter.
But I think it's 9 plus 2 alternates on the
Well,
budget.
okay, but it's still down
Okay,
from
so
20-something
e-
now.
exactly, it
And I
is.
saw this seems to be going in the wrong direction. We'd have that many people on the implementation committee.
Well, this is the comprehensive
comprehensive
plan
plan. I
committee.
know,
This is the
understand.
one
Yeah.
reviewing it. This is not implementation.
Is it something that's a standing committee? Comprehensive plan committee?
But as needed, isn't it?
We don't
Committee.
say that. We don't say that it sunsets itself, that once,
Well, it should, because there's no sense of having a committee standing for 10 years or whatever, you know.
exactly.
I think
Once the work is finished.
you
Yeah.
need to back up a little bit before
Sure,
that.
Lowry, go ahead.
This is like really far away. In the introductory paragraph,
Yeah?
in front of comprehensive plan, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down on the left, you need to add a, just a small a.
Oh, okay.
But on this one, I think the language is problematic on C, because it says, "The town shall develop and maintain a comprehensive plan every 10 years or as often as called for in state law." Well, the state law doesn't call for it to be done at all. Right? I mean, that was part,
That's true, 'cause
that
it
was
says
part of how we
may.
got into this discussion.
That's right,
Is
Larry,
to
it
say
says
that
may.
the SPO had been
Planning.
eliminated and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that language has, if you follow that language, you would never have a comprehensive plan committee.
Well, could you take out, let's see,
So I think we just say every 10 years.
or as needed? That way it would give the opportunity for 8 years if we need to.
And that's what number 2 takes care of,
Okay.
is interim. So what you're suggesting is the town shall develop and maintain a comprehensive plan every 10 years, or we can say or every 10 years.
Yeah. Or if you wanted to include a state law, you would say, or unless required more often by state law. And, because it could be, maybe 20 years from now, the state law changes. We don't know. Or just take the state law verbiage out of there.
Well, since it says or as called for in state law, it's not and as called for in state law. But I don't mind
Yeah, but
eliminating
it's
that. If it just says every 10
weird to have that in there
years,
when there's
keep
no
it-
state law that requires it.
let's just keep it simple then.
Yeah.
So the law is gone just because
No planning,
I knew the planning commission was gone.
Yeah, they
but-
shut down the SPO, the State Planning Office.
Right, but the law didn't stay on the books?
No, because who's to review it? Isn't it?
No, but the law, still in MRS,
That's what I
in the
mean, it's
in the
still,
state statute, it says the towns may
right,
have a comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
They haven't eliminated that,
right.
but we are saying shall, so I think that's your point.
Yeah.
Because the state statute says may and not shall, we're doing shall, so if we also state as state law, then we're in conflict. So I don't have a problem with simplifying that sentence.
Either way, that's fine.
So we'll end it at the end of every 10 years on that sentence.
is this an annual appointment of the comprehensive plan committee?
Well, I think the point is, if we are having a comprehensive plan committee, if it needs to end its duties, when the comprehensive plan is adopted, it wouldn't be an ongoing committee. So how do we state that simply? And I think you could have, a number 3, or move 2 down to a 3, and say the comprehensive plan committee shall serve until the comprehensive plan is adopted by the town. Is that,
Yeah.
so,
And I think because rewriting the comprehensive plan takes a while for those, and sometimes it will be written, sometimes it'll just be minor things. But if let's say the last one that was accepted by the town was, I think, 2017. Let's say it was 2017. If we wait until 2027 to form the next committee, then the new comprehensive plan won't be adopted until 2 or 3 years after that date, because it's going to take the time to write it. So then we're going to have a new comp plan every 13 years instead of every 10 years.
except in the next paragraph, we talk about from time to time may be appropriate to amend the comprehensive plan, blah, blah, blah. Wouldn't that take care of that problem?
Yeah, because I remember we discussed that, and that's what I was thinking. That should cover it. It would give,
Because if it's,
An
if
option.
it's
Well,
getting out of date, then we can,
We're getting balled up in the language again. John made the point that you felt strongly about last time, that you wanted to give the opportunity for individual citizens to participate in the comprehensive
and I still
plan.
do.
Okay, all right. What this says is that from time to time, if it's amended by the planning board.
recommendations are made by the planning
Well,
board.
okay, but it doesn't have the citizen involvement that the rewrite would have. What I think, I'm not quite sure how to say it, but I think the point is that every 10 years we want one that's updated. And that may well mean that the new committee needs to start 8 years after the previous one was accepted, or something like that, so that every 10 years we have a fresh one.
Well, that's going to be,
Well, I think that's, I don't think we put in the charter 2 years before the comprehensive plan hits 10 years, you start a new committee. Isn't that the responsibility of the select board to be looking ahead and deciding we need to work on a new comprehensive plan, or you're concerned that it'll be 13 years instead
Yeah,
of?
it might not happen. And there could be some years where the rewrite is really very simple. Maybe just bringing it current with some state laws, some little housekeeping kind of things, and maybe that only takes 6 months. But there would be times when maybe you want to do a major rewrite, and that's going to be multiple years to do that.
but I don't have an issue with just the planning board making recommendations for minor, something they discovered while they're in the process of their work, because and that's still got to go to public hearing.
Yeah,
And it's-
that's fine. I'm just saying.
So I don't have a problem with that part. I'm talking about that the main committee for a major rewrite, that should have citizen participation,
Agreed.
okay?
I agree with you on that. But what I'm saying is that the last time we rewrote this thing, it took almost 7 years.
Oh, I know, I
Okay?
remember.
So the one we've got now, I think, is dated 2017. And the previous one was dated, I don't know,
Is there a way to write it
2002
so
or
it just
something.
says
I mean,
it will be
it was
reviewed within a
significantly
10-year
older.
period?
Long time.
Or they'll start the review within a 10-year period?
Well, since we already have a comprehensive plan, I suppose we could say the town shall maintain and review,
Yeah,
or review
at least every 10 years.
at least every 10 years.
But again, when you say the town shall review, I'm not sure who that is.
Well,
The-
that very
the-
next sentence tells who it is. The select board appoints the committee to do that.
Okay, but if they do it every 10 years, then you could end up being 12 or 13 years between comprehensive
So
plans.
what do you suggest as an alternative to every 10 years?
I'm not quite sure how to put the language, but I think that right now, if we get to 2027, and the select board says, okay, we're going to put together the comprehensive plan committee again to do the work, it might not be till 2029 or 2030 until you've got something for the citizens to vote on.
But certainly if there was something in there that was a real sticker, or say, a problem, then you could bring that recommendation forward to solve that issue and then start a committee.
Well, you could, but then again, you've stretched the period of time.
But that's what we're doing now. We start about somewhere around 10 years. We nominate a committee, if we're lucky, and if not, the plan board, as it has in the last two, I believe, did the work. So,
Well, I'm suggesting that we make sure we get a new one every 10 years, rather than every 17 years. We felt as a group last week, or whenever we met, a couple weeks ago, that we wanted to say that the town of Camden shall, revise, rewrite the comprehensive plan every 10 years, because we felt it was important for the town.
could you write a maintain, or you have maintain review, but could it be written somehow that it will go to town meeting for discussion every 10 years? Or for citizens, something like that? I don't know what the
So the
wording.
deadline is 10 years, not the start date.
Right,
Yeah.
how's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I think that's
Somehow put that
what's
in?
key, so we know every 10 years we're going to get one.
I don't have a problem, that'd be, as long as it's going to the town meeting or to the voters by
Yeah.
every 10 years.
It's kind of like we don't wait for a select board member's term to expire to start the campaign to replace them. That starts 3 months ahead of time, or whenever it does, so that people are replaced, recycled at a regular pace.
Okay, so we want language that says the town needs to review and maintain a comprehensive plan that would be ready to go to town, or to the voters of the town of Camden at least every 10 years.
We have to talk
Yeah.
to Bill about that language. how that's
Yeah,
gonna
I think-
work.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we can polish that up some, but that's the intent.
Yeah,
Okay, so in that case, do we even need paragraph number 2? Because if we're talking about reviewing it and getting it ready to go to a town vote at least every 10 years, then do we need the, from time to time, it may be appropriate to amend it?
Yeah, because
still
there are
do?
times
Okay.
when there's new regulations that need to be recognized. And even within, the first 6 months to a year after this one was approved, I was approached by some people in the town who said, gee, we need to do a new section or update this one section because we currently don't address some needs that need addressed.
Maybe we should all silence our ringers
That'd be a great
Mine's on
idea.
vibrate.
or put it on
Leave your
vibrate if
phone
you
at
know
home.
how to do that.
Is this being recorded?
Yeah, this is live.
There.
Do you have a little button on the side, Bob, where you can,
I pressed it 3 times and it kept right on coming. But I'm powering it right off, it's completely off.
Thank you.
thank you. Don't want to alarm anybody in the audience either.
I agree with Larry, we could leave that, number 2, because I think he's right. There may be adjustments, and this allows the opportunity for some minor adjustments or
Usually
whatever
they're
felt.
pretty small. You know, the state has added a new definition or something like that. They're pretty small and easy to
Yeah.
deal with.
In that case, you're still okay with the planning board doing those little interim
I am, because
changes?
that's still got to go public hearing, it's still got to have the review,
And it's still got to go through the select board?
and it's still
Before
got to
it
go
can
town
go-
meeting, too.
Exactly.
So that, the safeguards are there, whatever you want to say.
Right.
And
The
I just
checks and
think the citizen participation really need to be in the big one.
So we do want to add something about the comprehensive plan committee shall serve until the new comprehensive plan is adopted by the voters.
Right.
All righty, so that will be also an Ask BK.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just basically the legal language, really. Right?
Okay, yes. On C. So if you turn the page, the rest of that section says, following the adoption of the comprehensive plan and any subsequent amendments, the select board shall direct the implementation of the plan's recommendations and strategies, working with the town manager, town committees, and other parties as needed. The town manager shall be responsible for working with the appropriate department heads to incorporate implementation strategies and department work plans. The town manager shall notify other responsible parties as identified in the comprehensive plan to coordinate implementation strategies. Appointed town committees and boards shall incorporate implementation strategies and committee work plans as assigned to them by the select board in the comprehensive plan. That's all new language after our discussion, so we are open for discussion on.
Do we really need to say the town manager? I'd almost feel comfortable with the code office or the, what's Jeremy's thing?
The plan?
Planner.
But he can't work with other department heads without
That's true.
going through the town manager. I mean, that's sort of the hierarchy. She can appoint,
Yes.
she can delegate, I mean, that's under her,
Well, you could write then town manager or delegate, right?
No, the town manager can always delegate stuff.
yeah,
Right, but if
that's
you-
in the
yeah.
powers of the town manager.
Okay, then that's fine.
And that's one of the ones
Yeah, because
already in
there
chapter
may
3.
also be things that are really just for public works. They're not really for planning or for the sewer or whatever, so.
I just don't want to create work for the town manager when should go to another
We
direction.
could put in, or it's delegate, or,
Well, you said the thing says that,
yeah, the powers already.
yeah, so I'm fine.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
With, but we need to see a rewrite
Right.
on 1 and 2.
What do you want to say? You want to approve the intent for now until we see the.
Revised language?
Right, from Bill.
Okay.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
I'd like to second your motion, John.
You okay with that, Larry?
Yeah,
I think that'll work.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the intent of the proposed
Discussion we had,
changes.
right.
The proposed changes pending review by Bill Kelly,
The legal language,
the
right?
legal language by Bill Kelly. And that was seconded by Jim Hurd. All those in favor? Great, thank you all very much.
Gene's probably going, hallelujah, we made it through.
Okey-doke. The next thing we were going to talk about, which is printed on your agenda, was some feedback from the Personnel Board. And as it says here in the note, they prefer to remain an elected board, so they didn't make any changes, any suggestions for any changes in how they're elected section. This is D here, duties of the Personnel Board, is their suggestion for how to describe what their responsibilities are. I think their opening paragraph is actually quite good.
Advisory in nature?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that too.
and I think that clarifies
Yeah.
where they are, you know.
So could you help me with something that happened? I can't remember if you were on the board. I think you were on the board. When we had the incident, when we were talking about adding a person to the different job description. And remember that the board had no say,
The Personnel Board or the Select
the
Board?
select board. It was all personnel board because they're elected, because they had all the say on the job description, yes or no, and even setting the salary amounts. And that was a BK ruling at the time. So I don't know where that would be. I don't
So
ever
that's,
seen it.
their language is in essence changing that, saying it's advisory to support
And
the
I'm
town
good with that.
manager and
That-
select board, as opposed to
A
the
law, yeah,
ultimate.
right. And I'm good with that. But I just want to point out, I do remember
Yeah,
when we had a.
And I think that
I don't
is an
remember that,
issue
Joe.
that when we first met with Audra, she actually brought this section up as something that created some conflicts and confusion about the lines of authority. And Section 3 in the charter, which is about the town manager, does name the town manager specifically as the personnel director, personnel manager. So I think that this language clarifies that the role is supportive.
Right, recommendations, whatever, yeah.
And it's, this last sentence in number 1 is, further, the Personnel Board is available to assist the town manager when called upon with other ad hoc human resource projects that reflect the vision and goals of the Camden Select Board. So it really is
That's a good
a
sentence.
supportive role.
Thank you. Who crafted that language?
I know that Rick Rector had a hand in that and may have worked with Stephanie or Kathy Painter. She's got a hyphenated name, and please forgive me, Kathy. Can't remember your last part of your name, but I think they worked on this.
Good.
Number 2 has really not changed. Number 3 is just really the same thing, but it's just in a different order. And number 4 is also, was also in the current language. And I think 5 is new. Personnel Board meets on an as-needed basis.
So why does it say delete?
This was the language that was in, the new language
It's pretty close.
that they've suggested replaces this.
Yes, okay.
I've just got a couple of housekeeping things here, Deb.
Sure.
In D1, the personnel board should be possessive. B-O-R-D
Yeah, there's an
apostrophe S.
apostrophe missing.
Okay. And on number 2, it says investigation and enforcement, the personnel board shall, parens 1, investigate, blah, 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 but there's no parens 2. So you
Think
don't,
that-
so you don't need a parens 1.
Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say what the personnel board does after it investigates. I mean, normally, language would say, ABC will investigate and then give its findings to, but it doesn't. It just says they'll investigate it.
I think that that's really a good comment, that report its findings to the personnel director, which is the town manager.
I would think something like that, just to kind of close the loop on it right now, so that they don't
That's great.
investigate and then don't tell anybody.
So is this giving them authority to investigate a personnel issue?
says either at the direction of the select board, town manager, or on its own motion.
Because the
That's-
town manager is supposed to be the only one, other than the direct hires of the select board, they do the manager and the couple other, no, they're just a manager, really. I
So
just-
you report the findings to the town manager, and then the town manager does,
But generally, the town manager does the investigations, or the lawyer for the town, but you don't have a committee or a group doing, even the select board does not do personnel investigations.
I'm checking the current charter.
Huh? Oh, that's what I'm asking.
It actually is in the current charter.
Right.
Part B of Article 4, on page 16, investigation and enforcement. It shall be the duty and responsibility of the Personnel Board to, and enforce through Personnel Director the observance of the rules and regulations. That's been eliminated. 2, investigate either at the direction of the Select Board or upon the petition of an employee or a citizen for reasonable cause shown or of its own motion concerning the enforcement and effect of the personnel policy or rules and regulations pertaining thereto, and take such other actions in furtherance of its duties to the extent permitted by law.
Yeah, I think you want to maintain the opportunity for an employee that's aggrieved for whatever reason to go to like a neutral body and say, let me tell you the problem I've got, and explain it to them. Because there may be times it would be uncomfortable going to their supervisor.
Well, there is in the Personnel Policy Manual a chain of how to address complaints, where the person can go up another level. And they actually have simplified this by saying it's the select board or town manager or itself concerning enforcement and effect of the personnel policy or its rules and regulations. They've actually
Yeah, I know.
watered down their section. I know that this is a sticking point.
What's Bill's thoughts on that?
If not, Bill's overarching thought was that this is the only charter he knows of, and this is the only charter I've found, that has a personnel board in the charter at all. And most of the town charters that we've reviewed do not mention a personnel board at all. So I don't know what he feels about this specifically, because he certainly hasn't seen this new language.
Yeah, that would have been my question. Why do we have one at all if it all comes down to Audra or the town manager and the supervisors? Is this just another layer of, yeah, and sometimes on this personnel board, it says it's to be open to the public. Sometimes I don't think that's really the best idea.
Well, it certainly depends on what they're discussing, but if they're discussing a change to, a proposed change to a policy,
Is there any reason for us to have one at all if the final decisions, or whoever has to speak in front of Audra and the, whoever else is in charge?
Is the,
I think that's a good question. We've made a huge change in this section because the personnel board role has changed because they no longer have to establish any policies or salary guidelines. That has all already been taken care of when the policy manual was written and adopted by the town. So that whole section in 4 in our current charter enumerates all of the things that it establishes. Why we condensed that all down to recommend, review and make recommendations on changes, because that's overtaken by events of having a policy manual. I understand your point, and I think that there is some feeling from the town manager and perhaps even some select board members that it should be an advisory committee, as they are describing, appointed by the select board just as any other advisory committee, as opposed to being an elected board that's officially in the town charter as such. And I think that's a good discussion, and probably could be one that could happen, comment that could come up at the select board workshop.
I think it might be, I don't know if Jeff Sukforth is still the employee representative or not.
Marlene Libby
Marlene,
is.
okay, but it might be a good idea to talk to her and say, what do you think, you know? Would this, because we want to make sure that the employees feel like they've got a place to go if they've got an issue, and that they would be received with an open mind.
So the pecking order now is if they have an issue, they're supposed to go to the immediate supervisor. If they don't feel that they've been addressed, then they could go to the town manager, right?
Yes.
And then if the town manager doesn't help them, what's the next step? Personnel board by the charter? I can't remember. It's been a while.
Supervisor, town manager, personnel board, it goes back to the town manager. What's the point of the
Well, I know it does go back to the town manager for the second review.
Well, I think that that's another problem here, is to say that the personnel board shall investigate blah, 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 and then report their findings to the town manager. If the complaint is about the town manager,
And then you designate.
then that's not, you need to have an alternate designee, I don't know, head of the select board or something like that.
Can't be the
Because,
select board, because they're the judge on the,
well,
Okay.
it's got to be somebody else.
yeah, we
Be-
probably Bill Kelly.
Grievance procedures in the personnel manual. Employee shall attempt to resolve the dispute directly with the department head. In-person discussion or informal writing within 5 business days, the determination in question. Then there's a written grievance. The employee shall, within 5 business days,
Right.
present a grievance again in written form, so they have a couple of strikes at that. And then failure by the, this is what you were asking, failure by the department head to meet the appropriate deadline set forth herein will allow the employee to appeal the grievance in writing to the town manager. If the employee's dispute with the department head's written decision on the grievance, the employee may appeal that decision by submitting the details in writing to the town manager. Let's see,
Select board is in there after that, I think, on some of them.
and this is the town manager shall meet with the employee and department head for purpose of resolving and shall render a decision on the grievance, which may include upholding blah, blah, blah. It does not say, that's the end of the grievance procedure.
Probably it's just immediate hires then by the select board that they have that act, you know, where they could have a public or a closed meeting. So it sounds like the personnel committee covers their options pretty well. That's been there for some time.
I think the basic question, when it comes right down to it, is should the personnel board be written into, continue to be written in the charter as an elected committee, or shall it be a committee that the select board appoints as an advisory committee? I mean, the select board has the authority to create any committee, to appoint any advisory committee. So I think it almost comes down to, does the personnel board belong in the charter, or just as a list of one of the advisory committees is appointed by the select board, in which case the select board would determine its rules and regulations like it does, you know, when you, I mean, the design team, for instance, that I'm on, you know, has a charter, so to speak, you know, the directive is put together by the select board. So I think it kind of goes back to Karen's question. Of course, Karen's question is, do we need a personnel board at all? I think it starts with, does the personnel board belong in the charter?
I wonder if some of that's, there's 4 boards in town: Select, Planning, ZBA, and Personnel Board. I wonder if there's some kind of legal distinction between boards and committees that makes boards need to be mentioned in the charter. I mean, the boards typically have some kind of quasi-judicial standing, because they can usually do more than make recommendations. They can usually make decisions. I wonder, you know, maybe that's part of it.
But the personnel board Personnel Board is not in the main statutes. When you look at the town manager plan of government, the town manager is the personnel director, human resources director, and there is no mention in the main statutes about towns having personnel boards. So I don't think there's something in the state
Okay.
law that tells us about the personnel boards, whether it's quasi-judicial or not, because it's not in the main state statutes. It was a creation of the charter at some point, and Bob, I don't know if you can help with this. I mean, the personnel board's been around for quite a long, long time. I don't know when it was created initially. If you have,
Where would an employee go to? He can't go to the town manager if it's an issue about the town manager. The personnel board fills that gap that gives the employee,
if it's a direct report to the town manager.
right.
And the Personnel Board is also an odd duck, because other than the Select Board, it's the only elected group,
Correct.
you know? Nobody
Budget,
else.
a board, yes.
Yeah, well, nobody, you know, no committees are elected.
The budget committee is.
Oh,
As
I'm
you-
sorry, I forgot about them, yeah.
And the nominating committee. That's the question again about the circle of the planning board and reporting to the town manager. If they had an issue with the town manager and went to the planning board, where does it go from there?
You go to the, s- you
The select
you go
board.
to the select board.
What planning
You
board?
skip the town manager and go straight to the select.
No, you have to
No,
go
no,
to the town manager.
if you're a direct report to the town manager
But
and
if
you have an
your
issue with the
is
town
town
manager,
manager,
you'd go to the select board.
Then what you did when we did that, we delegated Bill Kelly, remember? Because the complaint was against originally the police chief, then it was the town manager. So then we had to have Bill Kelly step in, because the select board could not do it, because they're the judge, so to speak, of the jury.
All right, so is this something that's boilerplate in the law, or did we just kind of wing it?
Well, I think a lot of it's the rights of the employee to make sure that they're handled in a proper way, if it's an employee and everything is confidential
Yeah.
until it's time to bring it, you know.
That's why the personnel policy manual was created to codify a process for the employee, but you're right, if it's a direct report to the town manager, there isn't anything either, I didn't see it in the personnel manual, but I'm not an expert on the personnel manual either. That a direct report to the town manager, who would they go to? I guess they go through the grievance, and if they can't work it out between the two of them, this would be a department head, then I suppose you go
Well,
to the
human
select board.
what do they call it, the state level? What I'm trying to think of, where they go for a complaint against labor law, labor,
Human resources?
no, I can't think of
No,
what it
there
is.
is.
There's a step there, that if you go to the state, put your case on, if they say that you have a case, and then they send it back. I think what they call it,
Yeah.
escapes me. It's right there, too. you know.
Well, for the division of labor, I would think,
It's part of the
Division of
labor,
labor.
but it's,
is the personnel board.
I don't want to downplay the role they've helped in the past with put together the personnel policies. They've worked hard, and they worked hard with Audra when she first got on board to get things brought up. But Karen's right. I think, you know, that it may be time for it to go to a different place, maybe some kind of advisory committee or not at all. That'll get me in trouble, won't it?
Well, I think the, one comment made by a member of the Personnel Board was, it's hard to take away something that town voters have had the right to do, when the discussion was, should you be appointed or elected? And the comment was, you know, we've been elected for, members of the Personnel Board have been elected for so long, it's hard to take that away. But Rick Rector is, you know, doesn't feel strongly one way or another. He doesn't.
But most people that are on these committees are not HR people. They don't know they don't deal with those types of complaints. So, you know, you gotta make sure that the employee is handled the right way and sensitive too. you know, and it's also, I mean, we see the select board has changed its role. It's no longer a tax,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Board of
assessor
Assessment
now.
Review.
Right, we now have a town assessor. So, but that's because things have evolved and changed and the expertise is needed. So, that's generally what causes it.
Where do you all want to go from here? Do we want to try to have a discussion with Bill Kelly? Do we want to hold this for, I mean, I'm sure it would probably come up in a workshop we have with the select board. What do you think, Lowry?
I think we should talk to, is it Marlene, who's the employee rep? Because they're the ones that are going to be most impacted if we eliminate the personnel board.
I'll second that.
And I just think that's the place to start. And if I was an employee and I knew that I had this place to go, if I had a problem with my supervisor and the supervisor wasn't willing to discuss it, that's
I mean,
reassuring.
once it goes up to the town manager
Well,
level.
but what if they're in concert, you know? I think you need to have a fairly independent group on HR matters for the employees to go to if they feel that they just haven't been treated right.
Run it by Bill too, and we'll
Yeah.
talk to Marlene for now. And then we're gonna end up with it at the select board meeting eventually, I think.
Yep.
I wonder if any of these other towns had a personnel board one time and did away with that.
Oh, I don't know. Rockport's charter says the select board will act as a personnel board if necessary. Kennebunk has no mention of it, Poland has no mention of it. Damascotta says the select board as necessary. Bar Harbor says the town manager or appointee is the human resources director. There's no mention of a personnel board. None of the others I've looked at mention a personnel board at all. And the HR director is the town manager or the town manager's appointee of the ones that I've reviewed. I mean, as Bill Kelly said, there's no mention in Maine statutes at all about personnel boards for town meeting, town manager, select board forms of government. There's no state law to help guide us. No.
What does Bill say, or what would Bill say if we asked him to make sure there's an avenue for employee grievance? You know what I mean? What would he recommend other than a planning board? As long,
Other than the personnel board.
right, personnel board.
So,
It makes sense to me what some of those towns have done, saying the select board will act as the personnel board, because they are on the same level playing field as the town manager, where you have all these different boards, it's going up and it's going down, and it's going back up again, it just doesn't make a lot
yeah,
of
the
sense.
town manager actually reports to the
Right,
reports
the
to the
town
select
manager's
board.
under the select.
Right.
Okey-doke.
But I
So,
think I'd like to hear Bill's opinion, I really would,
Okay.
and Marlene's.
okay, so we'll ask Bill Kelly for some more specific guidance on the personnel board and whether the personnel board acts as that stopgap if it's a department head, and if the personnel board is the one that fills the need for an independent or, what was your language, Lowry, objective, well, third party.
Yeah, an independent third party, you know, somebody who's not in the chain of command. Or a group of people.
Or does state law jump in at that point?
Well, there are arbitrators and all that stuff is
Yeah.
built in, but a lot of times you don't want to get to that level. You don't
Right.
need to get to that level.
I can write Bill Kelly,
Yeah,
and I will do that. What about Marlene? Anybody here want to chat with Marlene, or would you like me to? She actually looked at our first revision of the section about the personnel board months ago. I mean, I'm happy to approach her again if you want me to, or if one of you would feel more comfortable doing it.
If you want to do it, Deb, it's fine, but I hate seeing you do all the work, that's all.
I mean, I'm happy to have somebody else do it.
I know.
I don't need to be the person to do that, all I'm saying.
I would never be able to get away during the day to talk to her, that's the problem.
I'd like to do that.
There
Would
go.
you do that, Jim?
Did I actually say that?
Thank you, Jim.
I did. Thank you so much, Jim.
Make sure Gene
I
got
move
that.
that Jim does that.
Pardon, Lowry?
I said, make sure Gene got that in the notes, that Jim's gonna,
Okay.
Jim
okay,
volunteered.
okay.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
That's
My
great.
pleasure, Deb.
Thank you, thank you.
your work
thank
here is
you.
done.
Okay, and I think as we continue to work on this Personnel Board section, and perhaps it'll wait until after we have a workshop with the Select Board, but at some point, we'll need to get back to the Personnel Board, and perhaps we can invite them, if there's a way to do that. Maybe it's a Zoom meeting, and I'm not so sure whether it's just us or with the Select Board as well, you know, to talk to them about the feedback that we're giving back to them.
How many of them are there?
I beg your pardon?
How many are there on the Personnel Board?
7, isn't it?
No,
There's the town manager, one of the town employees,
five,
5, yeah,
Okay.
and 3 elected,
3
right?
elected.
Yeah.
Point-
And who are they? Who are the elected
Dave
people?
Merrimont was one, Rick Rector.
Rick Rector, Stephanie French?
Yeah.
Who?
Yep. Yep.
Who you talking
Well,
Kathy,
he's a
Kathy
consultant or
Painter.
something. He's not here a lot.
I'm talking about the Personnel
Oh, okay. yeah.
Board.
So it's 5.
Jeez. Get so used to being able to lick my finger. Stephanie French, Rick Rector, Lavana Snyder, Kathy Landau Painter, and Marlene Libby are the members. Okey doke, and I'll get back to Stephanie and tell her that it's still under discussion.
Very good.
Pardon me while I make notes. Okey doke, some clarifying language on the Budget Committee, and this is the section on the Budget Committee action on the budget. In talking with Robin McIntosh, who's chairman of the Budget Committee, she was reading it, and even though she's been on the Budget Committee and has been chairman, she's reading through the language and going that she didn't seem perfectly clear, and she wanted some clarifying language. And I think it was particularly the use of adoption and final so early in the discussion about the Select Board giving sort of the final approval, when that really doesn't happen until a town vote. So the change is, the committee may meet during the development of the proposed budget and shall meet upon the completion of the proposed budget prepared by the town manager, as outlined in B2 below. The committee shall keep a written and audio record of the meetings.
Why do we have the committee may meet, and then we say that the proposed, and shall meet?
They can meet during the development of the budget. It's actually during the development of the budget by the town manager. That's the current language. It's so they could meet early, but they shall meet as soon as the town manager has a proposed budget.
To review the
To
budget.
review the town, I should
Town
say that,
manager's recommendations.
the town manager's recommendations. So they could meet early.
Yeah, they did that a few back. They were meeting earlier in the year to be more prepared.
Yeah. But they will meet
Yeah,
once once the town manager has the proposed
Okay.
budget. 2 is prior to the final review of the budget by the Select Board. Notice we're changing and adoption of a final budget, because they really aren't the ones adopting the final budget. Prior to the final review of the budget by the Select Board, the Budget Committee shall meet and adopt recommendations concerning the town manager's proposed budget. Again, we've taken out that, or recommending taking out that word final. The recommendations shall be reported to the Select Board prior to their final review of the budget. The Budget Committee's recommendations shall be included in the town warrant for consideration by the voters of the annual town meeting. So it really is to explain the process.
But it does say that both recommendations go forward to the town meeting for a
Yes.
vote.
Yes, it says that. Recommendations shall be included in the town warrant for consideration by the voters at the annual town meeting. That
But the
hasn't
select
changed.
board has no say over the budget committee's recommendations. All they do is accept the recommendations, and then they make their
Right.
own.
Right, and that's why it says the Budget Committee's recommendation shall be included in the town warrant in
Yes.
number 2.
Okay.
And section 4A, final review and approval. After the receipt of the recommendations of the Budget Committee, the Select Board shall review the Budget Committee's recommendation and the budget as prepared by the town manager for their final approval at a Select Board meeting. At such a meeting, the Select Board shall approve the proposed budget with or without amendment to be included in the town warrant.
Okay.
I don't know if that anyway, the Budget Committee Chairman thought that made it a little clearer that final approval really doesn't happen until the end of the process. Worried that the language, having it earlier, would be misleading.
I think she's put a lot of thought into what these changes are.
So what do you guys think about adopting that clarifying language? Yes, Lowry?
I mean, you folks all know more about the budget process than I do. But this last sentence says, at such a meeting, the select board shall approve the proposed budget, which gives them no ability to say, no, we're not approving this budget.
Well, it says with or without amendment.
Right. And I don't know that there would ever be a time when they would say, no, we're going to vote against it.
Well, you can, but if it's just a recommendation, all it's gonna say is that the select board recommends whatever their number is, and then the budget committee's number goes in, and it's up to the townspeople to accept one way or the
So what
other.
you're not approving the budget. What you're doing is putting the budget on the warrant,
Correct.
because it's the legislative body, which is
Correct.
the citizens, that actually approves the
Right.
budget.
That's correct.
Okay, so I think we should change that language, because the select board doesn't have the authority to approve the budget, only the legislative body does.
Well, okay, so the last sentence says, at such a meeting, the Select Board shall approve the proposed budget with or without amendment to be included in the town warrant. Doesn't that
I
say
don't think
that?
approve, it says the select board should basically pass it to the warrant for review and decision making by the town meeting.
They're
They-
approving placing it on the warrant. They're
Yeah,
not
they're
approving.
they're
What did you say,
approving
Karen?
placing
I thought
their
that was pretty good.
version if they have a version of the budget to go on the town warrant.
Yeah.
But they have to put them both on
To
the
the
warrant.
warrant.
Right, right. They do have to put the budget in theirs.
How about Karen? Karen had a good thought.
Yes, Karen?
I said that last sentence, you could say, the select board shall move the proposed budget with or without amendment to be included in the town warrant.
Shall move the proposed budget with
Yeah,
or
so
without
they're taking
amendment
the
to be
work that they
like
did
that.
and moving it
I like
forward.
that too. That's
That's
great.
good. That's good.
You're the one.
Good edit. So that is in the last sentence of section 4A. Great. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion to accept the clarified language as edited by Karen?
Second?
Any further discussion?
You just did.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. 6-0. Thank you all so very much. Okey-doke. Next on our agenda is to talk about Select Board Workshop. And Lowry and I had a discussion with Audra and Bob, partly to talk about logistics. How is that going to work? Where is it going to happen? Which is one of the reasons we're meeting on stage here tonight, to see if this setup would work. And
It doesn't for me. I could barely hear what people were
it was hard to hear each
I'm
other.
wondering if these tables can come a little closer together, because I could hear these guys, but I couldn't hear them.
And if somebody was sitting back there, it would be
Worse,
difficult.
yeah.
I had trouble hearing you and sometimes hearing Lowry. The other thought is, Juniper, thank you very much, Juniper, for setting this up for us. Well, we could ask Juniper if she considered any other setups. If we were going to add 5 people, how would we add 5 people and keep social distancing? Because we're missing Jean, Mark, and Nancy.
Oh, that's right, too.
Right, so 3 more on here, and that doesn't allow much room for 5 people. Actually 6, because Audra will be here. She should be.
What's
Oh,
wrong,
absolutely.
what's wrong with the French room?
Not, I guess they don't feel they can distance enough.
Well, what if the select board
Well,
were,
if the select board stay
Up on
up in
top.
that round place.
They won't,
If they're on the dais,
I don't believe they will. They don't.
because they
won't do it
can't get
now.
6 feet apart.
oh,
So I think logistics is still an issue.
We, you know,
But a Zoom
you
meeting
folks,
won't work.
you're all more than 6 feet apart.
yeah.
The
mean,
microphones
You're sitting
are,
at an 8-foot table,
that's
yeah.
true.
you know, and I think that there can be, you know, if this shape was more round than it was square, maybe, and if need be, you could put a couple people in the middle. This is a large area.
Yeah.
We got to be able to fit people in here. And if we need to do things so that the audio is better, I got to believe there's some way to improve the audio.
Now, is there, if we're speaking into those microphones, does it go out of the airways, or can it go to a
Both.
speaker here in the middle of the room?
I don't know if Juniper can talk to,
Do you know?
Juniper? So I think maybe one or two of us could meet with Juniper to have another conversation about logistics.
And we might be able
Yeah,
to
if
move
they
these
put a
tables
speaker
apart and
here.
further down too.
Deb, do you have a date for this meeting of the selectmen?
We hope to have it on October the 28th.
And I have one, this is gonna, it's our meeting.
That
You're-
is correct.
you're the
We are,
chair.
we are inviting the select board
And you're the
to come
chair.
come to a workshop, yes. That would be true.
Yes. I
Yeah.
just want to make that clear because,
That was clarified,
yes.
That was clarified at our meeting.
because we're inviting them because we want to hear what their views are on
So
what
they,
we've done.
the questions should go through you to be
Yeah.
in an orderly way, because there's going to be so many of us here, there needs to be some kind of, second order, whatever.
We'll get the guy that moderated the debate last night because he kept it in such good order, you know.
We always bring Don.
And I think part of our role is to certainly listen to the questions, comments they have. I don't think the goal of the meeting is to solve or answer all of the questions that they may have. Their input and their questions are absolutely essential, just like other groups are. But I think we take that back into advisement and take it in light of the discussions we have already had on all of these issues, as well as input we get from other. But we only had, that list from them at the very beginning of things that they, some questions or things they wanted covered. That we got that in our second or third meeting.
And there'll be another opportunity too, because we're going to have a public hearing, and there are certainly citizens, so they can weigh in there.
Absolutely. So this is, a listening session. And as I said, we don't have to answer all of the questions and have, the
Take their
answers.
considerations under advisement.
Absolutely.
Did Bob and Audra give you any ideas of what's going through their minds about this process? To you, any details they want to share?
I think that we heard sort of from Audra in the very beginning, and I think it sort of manifested itself sort of in the personnel board section, about wanting to make sure roles are clearly, the roles are clearly defined, that, in the charter. And I think that, I shouldn't speak for them, but I got the impression, and Lowry, you can tell me if I'm off base, that they would like some more flexibility in the charter for them to to make more decisions. I think the COVID situation brought to light to them wanting to be able to move more quickly on certain things, but because the town meeting is the legislative body, the voters are the legislative body, I think they had some frustrations. And I think they want to express what those frustrations are in a workshop with us.
Yeah, I think the two primary things we were discussed was, number one, just the logistics. And there was general sense that it's better to meet in person, even with masks and distance and everything, than it is to meet by Zoom. It just seems to work better. So that was something we wanted to accomplish. And we talked about different venues that we could use to accomplish that. So that's important. But the other thing is that the COVID has certainly stressed all of society, all over the world. And one of the stresses is on municipal and state governments that really didn't have a program for how do you deal with these things. And they're trying to do as best they can as they go along. There are citizens that get stressed out, and they make requests of town government officials. And so I think what has happened is that they've thought of kind of what ifs that they had never thought of before, because we haven't been through a situation like this before. So I think it was new for all of us to hear that was part of what was going on in their head. So I think it's important to explore that a little bit more and to see what everybody's views are on it.
In the very start of our work here, we had Bill Kelly talk to us about the variety of forms of government in the state. And we have town meeting, select board, town manager. Then there are city council forms of government, but there's a hybrid version that a number of towns that are similar in size to us, even some smaller, have a hybrid version, which is town council, town meeting, town manager. For instance, Bar Harbor is a hybrid version. The town meeting still approves the budget, still approves zoning ordinances, still approves borrowing, but the town council can approve things that happen in, for instance, like the police ordinance. But the town meeting, the legislative body, is still the voters to approve the budget and borrowing. And there are other towns that have versions of that. So I think the thing that we heard is they're interested in what kind of flexibility could there be.
That's a slippery slope, though, because there's,
Well, it's a discussion we certainly had over one or two meetings, and we felt comfortable staying where we are. And one of the things we will find out as we have more public input is how do other citizens in the town feel. And so I think this is kind of a good segue to the next thing on the agenda, which is how do we do that outreach? And it's been complicated by COVID. There isn't any doubt about it. We can create some public information meetings here in the Opera House. We can have only 45 people, but we could do that. I also have thought about, and I have actually drafted, an informal, non-binding survey, whether we would have it available for the public to pick up at the town office or whether it would be online, to actually gauge how people feel. I mean, do you go to town meeting? If you don't, why not? How do you feel about who should give final approval to the budget? The voters or the select board? Same with zoning ordinances, in order to try and stimulate and get some response. And it wouldn't be the only public input, and we wouldn't just launch it. We'd have to have some articles in the paper. But it's one way of getting some information from people who would not come to a public meeting, but we would get some feedback. It wouldn't be the determining factor, but it is one way of getting input from people. Some people like to do surveys on the internet. Some people would rather pick a copy up at the town office and fill it out or see it in the newspaper, or, so that's one idea, as well as trying to have some in-person meetings. What do you all think?
Deb, can I go back to, go
Sure.
back to Audra and Bob's, is the word frustration, and is it born more out of the pandemic, or is it just born out of living in this world where things have to be done and they'd like maybe to get them done more quickly?
I think there's two things at play. I think that the pandemic has really made them think about it. I don't know, you may remember some time ago when we gave an update to the select board. There was some conversation about why doesn't anybody come to a town meeting? Not a lot of people come to town meeting, and that's our legislative body, and I think there's some frustration with that participation. And one of the other things that we did differently this year is we voted on the budget by secret ballot, which happens in many communities, even though they have a town meeting form of government. It doesn't mean you have to have an open meeting. That makes things a little more efficient to some degree for the select board, but I think they're looking for some efficiency.
But the frustration has been there for years. I mean, about things, if you feel, they always say there's, there's business speed and municipal speed. But there's also, municipal speed's there for a reason. It gives everybody a chance to think about it. If they like it, fine, and it continues on. If they don't, it comes to a screeching halt. And, I mean, how many projects have you done, or anybody of us have done, and spend a lot of time, and it's time to vote on it, and it just gets sunk, you
Yep.
know? And that's just part of doing what we did, whatever. I'm just worried about, going down the road of a council government, because that's gonna change the whole fabric of this community. And I don't believe it would ever pass, so I'll tell you the truth, but I always thought there was an emergency clause for the manager to be able to take care of the wealth and health whatever, of the citizens of the community. There are certain things that they can do.
There are certain things that they can do. As far as emergency ordinance changes, still have to be voted on by town meeting according to our charter. The only thing that's shortened is the public information side of it. And I know there is something they can, yes, go ahead, Karen.
Oh, no, when you're done, go ahead.
No, there is something in the charter about the select board being able to pass some emergency, have emergency ordinances, but it still requires a town vote. And if you have a lockdown and nobody can go out in person to vote, I mean, you could have a town meeting and 5 voters show up and pass it, because we have no quorum for town meeting. But then if you have a lockdown, nobody can come vote.
One quick, so what would they like to change for an ordinance during an emergency? Did they give you a suggestion?
Well, can I stick my nose in here for a minute?
Okay, go ahead.
One of the other things that popped up that kind of surprised me but didn't is they felt that some of the frustration came from the fact that citizens didn't understand what form of government we had, and based on that form of government, what the select board was allowed to do, was required to do, what the town manager was required to do, and that created confusion and frustration from people walking in and saying, hey,
Can you do this?
can we do this, whatever it is? Can we do ABC? And I'm saying, well, we can, but this is a process it's got to go through. There is, I believe Audra said that there is language in there that gives her the right to act on an emergency basis. But the example she gave was if a huge tree comes down in the street, by emergency, she can close that road until the debris is removed and it becomes safe passage again. But, it's very limited in scope to really genuinely life limb, loss of property kind of hazard or emergency things. So,
I think one
Karen.
of the other things was using,
What I was going to say
Yep.
is pretty much what Laurie spoke to, is there have been times that this room has been so filled that it violated the fire codes. The Miller roof was one of them.
That was at the high school gymnasium.
No, it's here.
No, it was here.
Well, there was one there at the high school, too.
Yeah.
No, but I was up there when I
And
voted,
then
I remember.
the other one was when we were going to do the
transfers.
eminent domain thing here at the outpost. We were going to take the sky.
Yeah, but that was.
But it filled
Yeah.
the room, John. I mean,
And there was
no
another
matter
one,
what, it filled the room, and that's what I'm saying. The other thing is, and it was very telling, when I was on the select board, we were sitting here. The room probably had 40, 50 people in it that night. I don't know what was going on. It was the budget committee. And a woman showed up at the podium. She obviously didn't come from here, you could tell by her accent. And she said, "What is this?" And John said, "What is what?" And she said, "What is this? What are we doing here?" I said, "John, let me take this. I think I see what's happening here." I said, under the impression that you're not from here. She said, yes. And I said, and you're thinking this is a town hall, like you see on TV. That people throw questions and answers, and somebody stands with a microphone, and so I said, no, what you're looking at here is town meeting, which is the purest form of government that you will ever see.
Most democratic form.
People make decisions up here, but then we ask your permission to go forward with that. And the woman went, oh,
I like that.
She had never seen this before. And I'm wondering if maybe at some point, somebody, I don't know who, it certainly wouldn't be us, would do an informational
It's a great idea.
program, because there are so many new people in town who have never approached a town form of government before. They've worked in city councils and all. And tell them, this is what you have, this is what your opportunity is, and if you show up, you make a difference. If you don't show up, you make a difference. You know?
I mentioned to Lowry, anybody and everybody that registers to vote in the town of Camden ought to be handed a primer of some kind
Good idea.
explaining what a town meeting form of government is.
Yeah, I think that would be excellent.
Education is a wonderful thing, and the town, it isn't our form of government's fault if people don't understand it.
They don't know it.
Town officials and officers have a responsibility. It's that, the thing about promulgating laws. There is a responsibility to communicate to people how town government works. It isn't necessarily the fault of the
And like
charter
you were
or a
saying
form of
before,
government,
There's so
but-
many different ways of doing that. I
Yeah.
came from a town in Brookline that was representative town government because the town was so big.
Right.
It's the size and population of the city. So you vote for a representative, and that representative goes to town meeting. for you.
That's true.
You know, so there's just another layer, but this is the most simplified, direct, forward, privileged way of involving yourself in what goes on in your town. And people don't take advantage of it because I'm guessing they don't know it. I can remember a time when people did show up to town meeting.
But a lot of people I've seen over the years, they don't get involved until it affects their home life.
Right.
And then once something, whatever it is, affects their street or their family, then they're up in arms, they'll come to the meeting and they'll say what they gotta say, and you won't see them again until the next issue comes up that bothers, influences their life.
That happens in city council forms of government, too.
Right.
It
And
does.
people, as long as things go along, people are usually pretty comfortable with what's going on. But, I mean, we have a core of people that are very involved with the community, either committees or just going to all the different things, and we appreciate that. But there are those too that are very happy how things are going. I don't know if they'd even know who half the select board is, you know?
Right.
Well, if an objective is to have a lot of people at town meeting, I think your idea is a good one, John. That's to propose the hybrid form of government.
Oh, and
That'd
they'll
get a
turn
few
out to
people
have a
there.
discussion about that.
That'd be a few people. I'm not suggesting you want that or we're gonna do it, but
Is there a way that we
take
could
Leonard up.
the town could do something that we could suggest to them?
He would
Maybe it
love
goes
that.
out with their
oh, yeah, you'd go
tax
crazy.
bill that gives them a one-page breakdown of what town government looks like and their responsibility at town meeting?
Yeah.
There are lots of ways communication could happen, whether it's articles in the paper, and even what we're doing is a way of introducing new people to our form of government, and that's one of the things that a survey could do. And what I'll do is I'll ask Janice to send everybody a printed copy of the draft I've been working on, so you can see the kinds of questions.
We're not doing a mailer.
No, I'm having
just
her
saying,
mail it
remember
to
the
you
mailer?
guys.
You remember the mailer we did?
The mailer we did.
With all those letters we put together and put
Oh.
stamps on? I just wanted to bring that up so she remembers. We did 4,000, remember?
We did.
Yes, right.
Folding and stuffing and stamping.
Yeah.
And what was in the envelope?
I can't remember
I
now.
can't
Don't even
remember.
remember.
This is that a long time ago, but we did. We had a folding, stuffing, and
Party.
Select board
party.
did
It
it.
was before we had a machine in the town office. But I'll have her send a draft,
Yep.
because the draft of the survey I've written so far sort of introduces what the form of government is, explaining that you are the legislative body of the town of Camden, because I think there are a lot of people that don't realize.
don't.
Probably
No,
the
they don't. Sure
best
they
place
don't.
you're gonna reach out is probably Facebook, believe it or not. I hate to say that, but something like that.
Yep.
And get it out there and have a explanation of what the town is, how it developed into being a town meeting government, how, it's old New England stuff.
Yeah, we know people that are really good at that
There was
Facebook
nothing
stuff.
on that, But what you just said, the verbiage that you just used, if that could go on one page in the tax bill and say, this looks like this because you showed up or didn't show up. You know?
So I will
Your
get,
presence would make a difference.
I'll get that draft out to see what you guys think of it. It's only 9 questions long, by the way.
Pardon?
This is really our responsibility.
No, it's not.
And I think that one of the other things we need to do
Something
is we
needs to
need
be
to get
brought
some
out.
newspaper articles out about what we're doing to remind people. There hasn't been one since Susan Mustapich interviewed Lowry and me a year ago. And I think it's time we, do that. And I think we need to come up with a schedule once we have logistics worked out about when we would have some public meetings, because we need to get a draft, our most final draft of the charter, in the hands of the select board by the end of March in order for it to go on the June ballot.
That's a ways away.
A little bit of a ways away, but we have more logistic problems than we did before. It'd be hard for us. We can't, as of now, we can't have a meeting in the French room and fill it.
Conference room.
Yeah, French conference room.
Will-
FCR.
Will we be, when we had land use ordinances go to the select board in late March,
Can you speak up?
I'm sorry, when we had land use ordinances go to the select board in late March to be included in the June warrant, the only changes that were allowed were kind of punctuation kind of stuff, incidental typos. Will the same regulations cover this, or will there be a broader ability to make it adaptation?
The Charter Commission presents it to the Select Board, and the Select Board puts it on the warrant. The Select Board are not the editors of the charter as proposed by the Charter Commission. That's state law. The Select Board,
Oh, I understand that. My thought is if we get to the point where we're in the final review with the select board prior to putting it on the ballot, and a citizen comes forward and say, gee whiz, can we change this sentence? Are we allowed to change it at that point and still get it on the ballot?
But you'd have to have another public hearing after you changed it.
Well, that's what I'm wondering if the same rules that govern like land use ordinances would cover this as well.
No subsequent changes without,
no, yeah, and I think our legal obligation is 1, but I think we need more than that. And we hold it
Yeah.
before it goes to the Select Board. So any revisions to the charter, proposed charter, would come through the Charter Commission from the citizens.
Okay.
And we give them the final product
so
that
is
goes.
it 2 public hearings?
We were talking about having a PIGM and then a hearing.
A what?
Public information gathering
Yeah.
meeting, which is an informal time. Some people get anxious about coming to a public hearing.
Just a public informational meeting, then you can have a
It's,
public
it's
hearing.
a
that,
more
but the
relaxed
thing is-
atmosphere, and sometimes people are more
But if
talkative.
you have
you know.
your public hearing and enough people show up or participate, and they don't like a section, and they want to change it, you're going to have another public hearing after those changes are incorporated.
If
It's
we
better
vote
to
to
schedule
make those
2 of them,
changes.
so you've got a
Right.
fallback.
If we vote to make those changes.
But I would, okay, depending on to me, it would be depending on how many people were there. I mean, if we had a large group that felt uncomfortable with what we were doing, whatever it is, then I think we'd have an obligation to include that into the discussion and the final draft.
We need to give ourselves enough time that we can have 2 public
Well, I
hearings.
know that,
if
but that's
what
the
we
idea
need.
behind the
So
public
all-
hearing,
so-
though.
So
to
all of
put-
that would happen, that needs to happen,
But that's what a public hearing is
Jan-
about. That gives the
Right.
public a chance to put
Right.
input into it.
exactly, it does.
Because once it's gone to the public hearing and it goes presented and it's finished document to the select board for
That's
the
right.
warrant, that's it. It goes
That's
to
right.
vote.
That's right. So we need to have a couple of those sessions where people have the opportunity, and draft has to be made available, on the library, on the town website. And that raises another thing. do we want to get a draft of this to the select board by the 21st of October?
They should have an opportunity to read it.
They should
So
have a
that's a
chance to
week.
read it ahead of time.
Good idea.
Yeah, the discussion will be better, I think, if they have
This is
that
what,
chance.
a week? This is what?
That gives them a
2
week.
weeks.
Yeah.
Oh,
Our next meeting is the 14th.
okay, I
which-
hear you. All
Which
right.
Lowry will be conducting, and then we would need to make any changes quickly after that in order to get a draft form out to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
The same form. So our next meeting is the 14th, 5:45, if that works for everybody. That's 2 weeks. And in the meantime, Jim is going to talk with Marlene.
Yep.
I'm going to talk to BK and get back to Stephanie, the Personnel Board, to tell her this is all still cooking. And I said I'm going to talk to BK about those changes. Was there something else? Am I missing?
Where is it gonna be here?
Our meeting will be here.
I-
I think we're still finalizing where the meeting is when the select board
Yeah, I
comes
think
to
the
visit us.
28th is up in the air,
But
but-
we're shooting for this venue.
For the 14th.
No, that'd be the
The
28th, when the select board comes as our guests.
And could we find out if it's possible to wire these into a speaker in the middle of the room so we can all hear each other a little better?
I think that,
I think it can be done. It's just a matter of being a techie.
Lowry, would you be willing to have a logistics hearing discussion with Juniper about how we
Okay.
could hear ourselves,
Okay.
hear each other better? Would you do that
Okay.
for me? So we will shoot for the 14th here unless logistics don't work out. But
Okay.
we will be in person.
Good.
Yeah, it's the only way it's gonna work, it's in person.
I agree. I think it's
Much better.
Right.
better in person.
Just gotta fine tune it a little bit. Well, I think we're all right.
Is there anything else that you all want to bring up? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second?
So we are adjourned. Juniper, we're good. Thank you.